Sunday mornings were kind of sacred in our house. No alarms, no rushing out the door. Just the quiet kind of time that let me pretend the rest of the world didn't exist. I'd wake up early, slip out of bed without waking Savannah, and head to the kitchen to make breakfast. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Cheese toast with just the right crisp, an omelet with diced peppers and shredded cheddar, and fresh squeezed orange juice. I even used the little frosted glasses she liked, the ones we got at a flea market in Asheville on a trip that felt like a lifetime ago. I was balancing the tray, proud of how perfect everything looked, when I nudged the bedroom door open with my foot. The curtains were still drawn, the morning light coming in soft and gold. Savannah was curled under the duvet like always, one hand flopped over her pillow, the other peeking out with her phone resting in her palm. That was the first odd thing. She never slept with her phone in her hand. I crossed the room quietly, about to set the tray on the nightstand when her phone lit up. "Thanks for last night. You're unforgettable." I didn't breathe. I didn't move. I just stared. The words burned into my mind like they were written in neon. The sender's name was just a number. No contact saved. My first instinct was confusion, maybe denial. I blinked a few times, hoping the message would disappear, that I'd misread it. But no, it was still there, still glowing on her screen like some cruel joke. Then she walked in. She was wearing that old t-shirt I used to wear in college, the one she always said was the softest thing she owned. Her hair was a mess, the kind of messy that used to make me smile. But that day, all I saw was the phone in her hand and the guilt she tried to hide in her eyes. She noticed me looking, noticed the screen, and without missing a beat, she snatched it up. "Oh, that?" she said, flashing a smile way too casual for what she knew I'd seen. "Some rando texted the wrong number. Happens all the time." She was already swiping the message away, locking the phone, setting it down again. Face down, of course. "Anyway," she said, walking past me like it was just another Sunday, "something smells amazing. Is that the good cheese or the regular one?" I didn't answer. I just stared at the phone now lying there like a ticking time bomb on the nightstand. My fingers itched. Not because I wanted to grab it, because I wanted to rewind 10 seconds and unsee what I saw. But I couldn't. I turned back toward the tray, suddenly unsure if I was even hungry. The toast had gone limp from the steam, the omelet's edges sagged, and the juice was starting to separate. It looked like a picture of comfort, but it felt like a lie. "I made breakfast," I finally said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. Savannah didn't respond. She was already in the bathroom brushing her teeth, humming something out of tune, like nothing was wrong. I stood there a little longer than I probably should have, the tray still in my hands, feeling like a ghost in my own home. Eventually, I set the food down on the nightstand, beside the phone I no longer trusted. She came out a few minutes later, drying her face with a towel. She didn't look at me. "You okay?" she asked, tossing the towel into the laundry bin. "Yeah," I lied. "Just tired." That was the thing about us. We didn't fight, not really. We had this unspoken agreement to avoid conflict whenever possible. It used to feel like peace. That day it felt like surrender. We ate in silence. Or rather, she did. I picked at the toast, pretending to chew while my thoughts churned like storm clouds behind my eyes. I wanted to ask. I wanted to scream. I wanted to believe her. But the message kept replaying in my head, over and over, like a broken record. "Thanks for last night. You're unforgettable." It wasn't even the message itself that got me. It was how she handled it. No shock, no confusion, no follow-up. Just a smooth little wave of the hand and a change of subject, like it didn't even deserve another second of thought. I started noticing things, little details that felt sharper in the silence. Her phone never left her side. She laughed more at texts than at anything I said. And the perfume, God, the perfume. When did she start wearing something so sweet and floral? She used to like the spicy, woodsy kind. She'd changed. And maybe I had too. Maybe I'd been so wrapped up in work, in routines, in being the guy who made breakfast on Sundays, that I hadn't seen her slipping away. But that morning, everything felt different. Like a door had closed behind me and I hadn't even noticed it until I tried to go back. By noon, we were watching a movie together. Or rather, she was. I was staring at the screen, watching the shadows flicker across her face, wondering if she was thinking about him. Whoever he was. Was he texting her again? Was he laughing about me, the oblivious husband with the perfect omelet? I kept glancing at her phone, now tucked into the couch cushions beside her. Face down. Always face down. I didn't ask about the message. Didn't demand the truth. Maybe I was scared of what she'd say. Or maybe I already knew. The silence between us wasn't comfortable anymore. It was heavy. Fragile. Like we were both pretending we hadn't just walked past the wreckage of something we thought was unbreakable. Later that night, after she went to bed, I stayed up in the living room, lights off, the hum of the fridge the only sound in the house. I kept picturing the message. The words. The tone. Unforgettable. I didn't sleep that night. I knew something had changed. Not just in her, but in me too. There was no going back to the version of me that believed the lie. Not now. Not after what I'd seen. It's strange how quickly the brain starts rearranging history once something cracks your version of the truth. 1 minute, everything seems fine, routine, predictable, solid. Then something shifts and suddenly all the little moments you ignored before start flashing like warning signs you wish you'd paid attention to. That text on her phone didn't just break the surface, it rewrote the past. All day, I moved through our house like a guest. Everything was too quiet. Savannah went about her business, watering the plants, folding laundry, humming off-key in the kitchen like she didn't just shake the ground beneath me that morning. Meanwhile, I was trapped in my own head, sifting through memories I thought I understood. I remembered the perfume first. Subtle but jarring. She used to wear something warm, earthy, like sandalwood with a hint of vanilla. But a few months back, that changed. Now it was floral and sharp, the kind that lingered long after she left the room. I noticed the difference, asked once if she switched brands. She said she just wanted to try something new. I believed her. Then there were the clothes. The sudden influx of new outfits that didn't match anything she usually wore. Tight dresses, blouses with plunging necklines, high heels she hadn't touched in years. I chalked it up to her reclaiming confidence or experimenting with style. I even told her she looked great. You've still got it, I joked. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I thought about that weekend she was supposed to be at a real estate conference. She left on a Friday, said she'd be back Sunday night. When she returned, she had this golden tan, subtle but there. She claimed it was from walking around the hotel grounds during breaks. But her luggage looked untouched. The pamphlets she brought back were generic, like she had grabbed them from the airport gift shop. I remember wondering about it, but brushing the thought aside. There was also the jewelry. A thin silver bracelet I'd never seen before. When I asked about it, she said it was a gift from a coworker. A female coworker. She was quick with that detail, too quick, I realize now. And when I offered to have it resized, since it seemed too loose, she told me to leave it. It's meant to be a little big, she said. Trendy. And the phone. That phone had become a wall between us. Always face down. Always on silent. Always attached to her hand like a second limb. She used to leave it charging in the kitchen at night. Now it stayed under her pillow. If it buzzed during dinner, she'd glance at it with this tight-lipped smile and say, just work. I didn't press her. I trusted her. That was the problem. I could trace back to when her excuses started to follow a script. Running late at the office, last-minute meeting, client meltdown. Once or twice, I tried calling her work phone to surprise her only to get her voicemail or hear that she had stepped out. I let it go. People get busy. Life gets complicated. But it wasn't just that. She stopped touching me the same way. She still hugged me, still kissed me goodbye, but there was something mechanical about it. Like a task to complete. Sometimes she flinched when I reached for her in bed. Said she was tired. Headaches. Stress. The in asterisk Macy faded slowly, like watching the tide pull back and waiting for it to return. I thought maybe we were just in a rut. Marriage has seasons, right? I kept telling myself that. Told myself not to make it a big deal. Told myself she loved me. That we were just tired. Overworked. Human. But now I couldn't stop replaying it all. Every sign I ignored, every conversation where I chose not to dig deeper. I'd been so afraid of rocking the boat that I didn't notice we were already sinking. I thought back to the night I came home early from my buddy Travis's place. Savannah wasn't expecting me. She was in the kitchen, on the phone. When I walked in, she literally jumped, and quickly ended the call. Wrong number, she said, laughing nervously. I remember thinking it was weird, but she hugged me right after, asked about my night, and acted so normal that I dismissed it. Now it felt like a scene from a play, perfectly rehearsed. And those business trips? There were gaps. Weird, inconsistent details. Once, she told me she stayed at the downtown Marriott. I had flowers delivered there the next day. They got returned, no guess by that name. She told me they had checked in under her coworker's reservation, that it was all billed through the company. She made it sound like I had caused a scene. I apologized. I actually apologized for trying to be thoughtful. I went upstairs and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at our wedding photo on the dresser. We looked so young, so sure. I remembered how she cried during her vows, how I held her hand through every syllable. I believed her. Every word. But that photo started to feel like a prop in someone else's story. Even the way she talked about the future had changed. We used to make plans, vacations, home upgrades, maybe starting a family. Lately, it was all vague. We'll see. Let's wait. Not the right time. I thought she was just being careful. Now I wasn't so sure. I picked up her pillow and held it close to my chest, inhaling the scent she left behind. It was that same unfamiliar perfume, sweet, floral, alien. The kind of smell that didn't feel like home. I sat there for a long time, not moving. Just sitting. Letting the weight of it all sink in. This wasn't about one text message. That was just the spark. The truth was, our marriage had been unraveling one thread at a time, and I hadn't noticed until the whole thing was ready to come apart. By evening, Savannah was on the couch with her laptop open, headphones in, watching one of those renovation shows she loved. She looked peaceful. Like nothing had changed. But everything had. I stood in the doorway watching her laugh at something on screen. She caught me looking and smiled. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Just thinking." "About what?" "Everything." She tilted her head. "You're being weird today." I smiled back. "Yeah, I guess I am." She shrugged and turned back to her screen. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. She wasn't worried. She didn't think I'd ask questions. She didn't think I'd push back or look closer. Maybe because I never had. Maybe because she knew me too well, knew I was the guy who trusted first and doubted later. But she didn't realize something had shifted. I did. And once that shift happens, you don't go back. You can't. By Wednesday, the pretending had worn me out. Savannah had returned to her usual rhythm, morning yoga, smoothie prep, checking emails with her AirPods in, tossing out little smiles and casual remarks like nothing was wrong. And I played along, nodding where I had to, laughing when I was expected to, but inside I was drowning in silence. That text hadn't faded from memory. If anything, it had sharpened. I could still see it. "Thanks for last night. You're unforgettable." 7 words that wouldn't let me rest. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed more than a hunch. I needed facts. It started with a late-night Google search. Just me, a cold cup of coffee, and a desperate need for clarity. I researched data recovery software, cloud sync exploits, anything that might help me access deleted messages or backups from Savannah's phone. I didn't feel proud. I felt sick. But the truth was eating me alive, and the silence between us had become unbearable. The software I found claimed it could pull from cloud-based backups if credentials were available. And I had them. Her passwords, she hadn't changed them in years. The same ones we used to share for everything from Netflix to our grocery delivery app. I typed it in with shaking hands, half hoping it wouldn't work. But it did. Within minutes, a mirror of her phone's recent backups began loading: text logs, image files, location history. I didn't know what I was looking for. Or maybe I did, and I just didn't want to find it. It didn't take long. The first thing that stood out was the photos. Dozens of them. Savannah and a man I didn't recognize, smiling at each other like they shared a private language. The pictures were candid, her laughing mid-sentence, him tucking a strand of her hair behind her ear, both of them barefoot at what looked like a lakeside cabin. I zoomed in on one. She was wearing that silver bracelet. The timestamps hit me hardest. They matched the dates of those work trips. The tan, the gift shop brochures, the Marriott mix-up, all of it lined up with these getaways. Different backgrounds, same man. Sometimes they were at a restaurant, sometimes curled up on a couch in front of a fireplace. In one, they were roasting marshmallows. She hated marshmallows. I kept scrolling, numb. Then came the texts. Some were mundane, inside jokes, emojis, "I miss you already" stuff. But others cut deeper. "This weekend felt like our life. I don't want to leave it behind." He still has no idea. "I think we're in the clear. Soon. Everything's almost settled." That last one made my skin crawl. Settled, like what? Divorce plans? Financial arrangements? A new home I didn't know about? I clicked into her notes app. There were lists, budget breakdowns, addresses, even a draft email about taking space to figure things out, one she hadn't sent yet. Maybe she was still working up the courage. Or maybe she was waiting for the right time to walk away. But that wasn't what haunted me most. It was how free she looked in the photos. Her smile in those moments was different. Not the kind she gave to strangers or acquaintances. Not the polite, stretched thing she wore around me these days. It was real. Unrestrained. An asterisk mate. I leaned back in the chair, the room spinning. There was no ambiguity left. No more benefit of the doubt. Savannah wasn't drifting. She was gone. She just hadn't told me yet. I closed the laptop slowly, my hands trembling. Every instinct screamed for confrontation, march into the bedroom, throw the evidence in her face, demand the truth she was too cowardly to say out loud. But another part of me, quieter, sharper, held me back. Because now I knew. I knew what she was doing, where she was going, what she was building without me. And she didn't know that I knew. That gave me something I hadn't had in days. Control. I stared at our wedding photo again, still sitting on the dresser like some kind of cruel joke. I remembered how she looked that day, eyes wet with emotion, hands squeezing mine just before we walked down the aisle. She used to say I made her feel safe. That no one had ever really seen her the way I did. Now I wasn't sure if I ever saw her at all. The next morning, I went through the motions. Made coffee. Packed her lunch. Kissed her on the forehead as she headed out the door. She smiled, said something about catching up later. I told her I loved her. I don't know if I meant it. I don't even know if she heard it. I spent the rest of the day printing everything. Photos, messages, cloud logs, even GPS data from the nights she told me she was staying late at work. I put it all into a folder, labeled it neatly, and locked it in a desk drawer in the guest room. It wasn't revenge I was after. It was precision. I kept replaying her words over the last few months. The lies were so casual, so clean. She didn't stumble or hesitate. She'd gotten good at this. Too good. That's what hurt the most, not that she cheated, but that she had become so led at lying to me. She still laughed at my jokes. Still reached for my hand in public. Still let me make her breakfast every Sunday. And all the while, she was drawing up blueprints for a life where I didn't exist. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat out on the porch, watching the wind move through the trees. Our house was so quiet. It used to be a comfort. Now it felt like a lie. I thought about confronting her again, setting the folder on the table and watching her unravel. But it felt too early. I needed to think bigger. I needed to understand the full scope before I made my move. Because this wasn't about catching her anymore. It was about protecting myself from what came next. I didn't confront Savannah. Not that night. Not the next. Not even when I caught her staring off into the distance during dinner, her fork poking absently at grilled salmon she usually loved. She wasn't present anymore, not really, and I didn't push. I couldn't. Because I had work to do. It's amazing how clear things become when you're no longer trying to salvage something. Once I let go of the version of our marriage I had held onto so tightly, I stopped asking why and started asking how. How do I protect myself? How do I untangle our lives without leaving the pieces in her hands? The answer came from a dusty manila folder buried in the bottom of a filing cabinet in the garage. Years ago, just before our wedding, my dad insisted I draw up a prenuptial agreement. I resisted at first. It felt cold, transactional. But Dad had seen things. He built a life from nothing, made and lost money more than once, and he always said the worst time to plan for storms was while standing in the rain. Savannah agreed to sign, maybe a little too quickly, probably because we were in love and she thought it didn't matter. She even joked about how unromantic it was. The agreement wasn't complex, but it was airtight. The house was in my name. So was the lake cabin we rarely used. The joint account was technically joint for convenience, bills, groceries, vacations, but every major asset was documented, deeded, and filed under mine. Back then, it felt paranoid. Now, it felt like armor. I took Friday off work, told Savannah I had some last-minute meetings out of town. She didn't question it. She barely looked up from her phone. I packed a small bag, left early, and drove straight to the old law office where a friend from college still practiced estate and asset law. I hadn't seen Brian in years, but he took one look at my face and cleared his afternoon. "You don't need to say much," he said, sliding the prenup across the table after I handed it over. "This kind of expression, I've seen it before. You're here to protect yourself." I nodded. "I want everything secured. Quietly. No moves she'll see coming." Brian tapped his pen on the desk. "We can transfer everything into a protective trust. I'll oversee it directly, and you'll want to freeze any joint financial access. Credit cards, lines of credit, anything she could touch before the filings begin." "What about the cabin?" I asked. "And the equity from the remodel?" All yours. It's clearly outlined here. If you move fast, she won't even know she's lost access until it's too late. I swallowed hard. I wasn't used to thinking like this, strategically, defensively. But something had changed in me. This wasn't about punishing her. It was about taking back control before the narrative got twisted. I spent the next 2 days at an old workspace I kept in a strip of offices just outside town. It used to be where I freelanced before my current job, quiet, under the radar, still functional. I brought coffee, my laptop, and a stack of old records. By Sunday night, the trust was finalized. The primary home, the lake property, and my business shares were no longer in my name, not directly. Everything had been moved to a revocable trust with me as sole trustee and beneficiary. Savannah's name had never been on the deeds, but now she wouldn't even be able to contest ownership in court. The accounts were separated, and the financial institution had been alerted to monitor for any sudden withdrawals. That's when I took the final step. I drafted the email to my divorce attorney, attaching the folder I'd built with photos, messages, travel data, everything. I didn't dramatize it. I just laid out the facts in clean, chronological order. By the time I hit send, my hands were steady. The hardest part was going home. Savannah was in the kitchen when I walked in that night, drinking wine and scrolling on her tablet. She glanced up, barely masking her disinterest. "How was the trip?" "Productive," I said. She smiled. "Good." And that was it. No kiss, no questions. Just a quiet, seamless performance that almost made me doubt everything I knew. Almost. Later that evening, she climbed into bed beside me and started talking about a new yoga studio she wanted to try. I listened, nodded, offered a neutral, "sounds nice." But my mind was elsewhere. I kept thinking about the folder locked away in the office, the trust documents in Brian's drawer, the messages she never meant me to see. I watched her as she talked, animated and breezy. There was a time I lived for these late-night chats, when her voice was the soft landing to my day. But now every word felt scripted, like she was reciting lines to hold up the illusion. I wondered if she knew. Not about the evidence, she couldn't have. But maybe she sensed the shift in me, the silence in the space where suspicion used to live. Maybe that's why she talked more that night. Maybe she was trying to fill the quiet. Or maybe she was just waiting for the right time to leave. The next morning, I transferred the remaining money in our joint account into a newly opened trust account under my name. I left enough for bills to avoid suspicion, but the bulk was locked away. The bank confirmed all changes via encrypted email. Then I logged out of everything we shared: streaming services, cloud storage, even the shared calendar we used for planning trips we never took. Each step felt like closing a door. By Tuesday, I had rerouted my paychecks, changed the security settings on all accounts, and enabled two-factor authentication on everything personal. My will was updated, and the attorney had already begged *N preparing divorce filings to be served the moment I gave the green light. Savannah, meanwhile, was planning a girls' weekend. I watched her on the couch, chatting in a group thread, laughing at something someone sent. Maybe it was him. Maybe she was coordinating another lakeside escape. I didn't ask. I just watched. That night, she asked if I could pick up a bottle of wine from the store. "The one with the little gold label," she said. "You know the one." I did. I got it. Set it on the counter. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "Thank you, babe." And for the first time, I didn't flinch, because I knew what she didn't. I had already left. Not physically, but structurally, financially, legally. She thought she was playing a long game, planning an exit on her terms. But the exit had already happened. Quietly, precisely, without her ever noticing the moment the foundation disappeared beneath her feet. Savannah didn't notice the moment the ground gave out. It was a Friday afternoon when it started, quiet, unassuming, the way slow disasters tend to begin. She had just returned from getting her nails done, French tips this time, waving them in front of me like she was showing off trophies. I smiled politely, even complimented the color. She smiled back, pleased with herself, completely unaware. 2 hours later, she was standing at a checkout counter, debit card in hand, while I was home on the porch sipping tea. Her first clue came from the card reader. Declined. She tried again. Same result. She blamed the machine, the network, the universe. Finally, she called the bank. 20 minutes later, she came storming through the front door, face flushed, voice sharp. "Did you close our account?" I looked up from my book, calm. "No, it's still open." She stared at me, confused. "Then why can't I use my card?" I closed the book gently. "Because you no longer have access." She blinked like I'd spoken in a language she didn't recognize. "What do you mean I don't have access?" I stood up, walked past her into the kitchen, and poured a glass of water. "It means exactly what it sounds like. The joint access is gone." Her voice rose. "You can't just do that." I turned back, steady. "Actually, I can. Your name was never legally on any of the assets. It was a convenience. One that I've now decided to end." She stood there in the kitchen, her expression flickering between shock and disbelief. "What's going on, Martin?" I leaned against the counter. "You ever hear the phrase, 'Silence speaks louder than words'?" "What?" I took a slow sip. "I saw the message, Savannah. The one on your phone. Thanks for last night. You're unforgettable. That was 2 weeks ago. I saw it. And I didn't say a word." Her face drained of color. "I let you keep going. I let you smile, lie, go on your little getaways. While I secured everything. While I made sure that the life you planned to leave behind would move forward. Without you." She staggered back like I had slapped her. You've been planning this?" "Yes." Her voice cracked. "You can't just erase me like that." "You already erased yourself," I said quietly. "You just didn't notice you were gone." She turned away, pacing, fingers running through her hair. "This is insane. You can't just disappear." "What about the house? The accounts? My car? Gone. Frozen. Transferred. The house isn't in your name. The trust owns everything now. You never thought to ask, did you? Or maybe you assumed I'd be too heartbroken to fight back." She was shaking now, her voice trembling. "You're ending our marriage like this?" "No, Savannah. You ended it the moment you started building another life behind my back. This," I motioned around the house, "this is just the cleanup." She tried again later that evening, after the shock wore off, after she tried and failed to log into our streaming services, the shared drive, even our grocery app. Everything she once took for granted had been quietly cut off, one string at a time. When she realized my phone number had been changed, she went pale. Her text bounced back. So did her call. I watched her try it from across the room. She stared at the message undeliverable screen like it was a ghost. "You changed your number?" I nodded. "Along with every password, account, and point of access." Her voice was a whisper. "You're erasing me." I didn't respond, because I already had. That weekend, I packed a bag and left the house without saying goodbye. No dramatic exit. No confrontation. I left a printed copy of the trust paperwork on the kitchen table, beside her favorite candle. A second envelope held the notice of asset division and a formal request to vacate the property within 30 days. The silence that followed was the loudest message I could send. I didn't stay in a hotel or at a friend's place. I drove 3 towns over and checked into a small guest cabin my family used to rent for holidays. It was off the grid, barely had cell reception, but it had what I needed: space, quiet, and time. In that quiet, I started to feel something I hadn't in months. Relief. Not joy. Not freedom. Just a slow, steady breath that didn't hurt. A kind of numbness that wasn't panic or rage. It was just empty. And that was okay, because I had nothing left to hold up anymore. No lie to protect. No illusion to preserve. Savannah, meanwhile, spiraled. I heard from friends, well, former mutuals. She was asking around, trying to track me down. Some said she was crying. Others said she was furious. She didn't know who to be anymore. She had lost the control she never realized she never had. One evening, I logged into a separate email account I'd set up for legal correspondence. There were 6 unread messages from her. Subject lines like, "Please let's talk, you can't do this, I'm so sorry, and we were happy, weren't we?" I didn't open them. I forwarded them to my attorney, then deleted them all. She called my mother. That part stung. My mom didn't know the details, I'd kept it vague. But Savannah tried the sympathy route, telling her I was acting out of character, that I was going through something. My mom politely told her to stop calling. She reached out to my boss. Asked if I was okay. Said she was worried. Said she just wanted to talk. But I was done talking. The life she built behind my back had never factored in what would happen if I quietly stepped out of frame. She assumed I'd chase. That I'd beg, rage, collapse. But I didn't. I disappeared. And that absence was louder than any argument we ever had. One day, I drove back to the house, parked on the street, and watched through the trees. Savannah was in the kitchen, pacing, phone pressed to her ear. Her movements were sharp, agitated. She was losing control and she didn't know how to stop the freefall. I watched for 10 minutes. Then I left. Not because I didn't care, but because I did. For myself. A week passed before I saw Savannah again. She found me at the auto shop where I used to work part-time before landing my current role. I guess she figured I'd retreat somewhere familiar. She was waiting outside when I arrived, arms folded, wind tugging at her coat, eyes tired. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Martin, she called as I stepped out of the car. I didn't flinch. Didn't speak. Just walked past her, the key already in my hand. Please, she said, following. I just need 5 minutes. I stopped at the garage door but didn't turn around. 5 minutes. She stepped in front of me, arms shaking now. What you're doing, it's cruel. No, I said flatly. What I'm doing is clean. She opened her mouth to argue, but I handed her a folder before she could start. Inside were copies of the prenuptial agreement, divorce papers already filed, and a statement of transferred assets, everything notarized, everything final. She flipped through the pages, mouth opening, then closing again. You were never going to talk to me about this? She whispered. There was nothing left to talk about. She stood frozen, rain beginning to fall around us. For a second, I saw her, the version I used to love, standing in the kitchen barefoot, laughing at some dumb joke. But that person was gone. Or maybe never real. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said quietly. You did, I replied. You just didn't think you'd get caught. She looked down, clutching the folder to her chest. And that was it. No shouting, no tears, no last-minute declarations. Just a woman in the rain holding the consequences she thought she'd never have to face. 2 months passed. The house was sold. The joint accounts were dissolved. The divorce was finalized without contest. Savannah moved out before the 30-day mark, taking only her personal belongings and a single box of sentimental things I hadn't touched. I never saw her again. I heard she was staying with a friend across town, bouncing between couches while job hunting. The man she had imagined a new life with? Gone. According to what little filtered back through mutual contacts, he disappeared once the financial safety net did. No lakeside cabins, no shared life. Just silence. She reached out to her son, her last lifeline. He responded, but only out of politeness. Their calls were short, strained. He was angry, distant. Old enough to understand betrayal. Too old to pretend. I received one last message from her. It wasn't dramatic. Just a single line in an email. I didn't realize how much I had until I lost it. I didn't reply. What could I say? That I forgave her? That I didn't still wake up some nights feeling like I'd been punched in my own home? No. Some things don't get answers. Savannah had traded certainty for a thrill. Stability for whispers and weekend escapes. She gambled with her life and she lost more than she could ever get back. And now? She lives in a spare room surrounded by reminders of the life she walked away from. Me? I live in peace.